There is someone in your life right now who is not who they say they are. They smile at you. They laugh with you. They call you their friend, their partner, their colleague. But behind that smile, they are studying you. Quietly, carefully. Like a hunter who has found a trail and is following it one soft step at a time. And the scariest part, you already felt it. You felt it when something they said left you feeling small, but you couldn't explain why. You felt it when you agreed to something you didn't want to do and walked away wondering how that happened. You felt it when you apologized for something that wasn't even your fault. You felt it, but you told yourself you were imagining things. You weren't. What you felt was the hand of a manipulator at work. And today, on the Aware Mind, we are going to name it, face it, and dismantle it. Peace, stay with me, because what you're about to learn in the next 20 minutes could change every relationship in your life forever. Let's start with something Carl Jung said that most people are not ready to hear. Jung believed that every human being carries what he called a shadow, a hidden side of themselves that they refuse to look at. The parts they are ashamed of, the parts they suppress, the parts they pretend do not exist. But here is what Jung also said. He said, everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. In plain words, the more a person refuses to face the darkness inside themselves, the more the darkness leaks out into the world, and it leaks out through control, through manipulation, through the need to dominate other people. Manipulators are not evil geniuses sitting in dark rooms plotting your downfall. Most of them are not even fully aware of what they are doing. They are simply people with enormous unaddressed pain, enormous unexamined shadow, and they have learned, somewhere along the way, that controlling others makes that pain go away, at least for a little while. Understanding this does not mean you excuse them. It means you see them clearly, and seeing them clearly is where your power begins. Now, before we get into the 7 tactics, I need to tell you something about how manipulation actually works, because most people get this wrong. They think manipulation is loud. They think it looks like yelling, or threats, or obvious cruelty. But real manipulation, the kind that works, is quiet. It is invisible. It lives inside compliments, and favors, and tears, and jokes. It looks like love. It feels like care. And by the time you realize something is wrong, you are already so deep inside the dynamic that getting out feels impossible. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, described a mechanism he called projection. He said that people often take feelings they cannot accept in themselves, guilt, anger, inadequacy, and project those feelings onto others. They make you feel guilty for things they did. They make you feel small so they do not have to feel small. They put their inner world onto you like a costume, and then they react to you as if you are the problem. This is why being around certain people leaves you feeling exhausted, confused, and somehow at fault, even when you did nothing wrong. You are not crazy. You are not too sensitive. You are someone who has been carrying another person's emotional weight without knowing it. And that ends today. Before I give you the 7 tactics, I want to paint you a picture. Imagine a man, let's call him David. David is smart, kind, and a little too eager to help. At work, there is a woman named Sandra, who everyone seems to love. Sandra always has a warm smile for David. She always picks him for group projects. She tells him, I don't know what I would do without you. David feels seen. He feels valued. He works harder. He covers for Sandra when she misses deadlines. He takes on extra work because he doesn't want to let her down. He starts saying yes when he means no, because saying no feels like betraying someone who believes in him. 6 months later, David is burnt out, passed over for a promotion that Sandra got, and wondering what he did wrong. He didn't do anything wrong. He just didn't know the rules of the game being played. Sandra may not have even known she was doing it, but what she did, using praise to create obligation, using warmth to lower defenses, using connection to extract labor, is one of the oldest manipulation tactics in human history. Robert Greene, in his landmark work on power, put it this way. He described the danger of what he called selective charm, the way certain people deploy warmth not as genuine feeling, but as a strategic tool to make you feel indebted, to make you feel chosen, and to make you feel that losing their approval would be a kind of death. And because you fear that loss, you comply, and you comply, and you comply until there is nothing left of you to give. Here is the truth, and I need you to sit with this. Manipulation survives on one thing, and one thing only: your unawareness of it. The moment you can name what is happening, its power over you drops. Not completely, not immediately, but it drops, because manipulation is like a magic trick. Once you see how it is done, you cannot be fooled the same way again. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, who led one of the most powerful empires in history while surrounded by people who wanted to use him, wrote in his private journal these words: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He was not talking about positive thinking. He was not talking about pretending everything is fine. He was talking about the deepest form of self-mastery, the ability to look at a situation, including a painful, unfair, manipulative situation, and choose your response with full awareness, rather than react from fear. That is what the next 7 tactics are built on. Not revenge, not coldness for its own sake, not becoming a manipulator yourself, but awareness, clarity, self-mastery, and the willingness to finally protect your own mind. Tactic 1. The shadow mirror. See what they don't want you to see. Carl Jung did not just teach us about the shadow. He taught us something even more powerful, that when you can see someone's shadow, you become almost impossible to manipulate. Here is why. Manipulators depend on a gap, the gap between who they appear to be and who they actually are. They show you the mask, the charming version, the helpful version, the suffering version, and they need you to believe that mask is the whole story. The moment you start seeing behind the mask, you stop reacting to the performance. And when you stop reacting to the performance, the manipulator loses their grip. So how do you see behind the mask? You watch the pattern, not the moment. Anyone can have a bad day. Anyone can snap once, or say something unkind once. But manipulators have patterns. They are always the victim, or they are always the one who sacrifices the most, or they always seem to need something from you at the exact moment you need space. Or their stories always change slightly depending on who is listening. Patterns do not lie. People lie, but patterns do not. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of seeing clearly, including seeing other people clearly, without the fog of your own wishful thinking, your own fear of conflict, your own need to believe the best. The shadow mirror tactic is this. When someone tries to make you feel guilty, confused, or small pause, do not react. Instead, ask yourself, what pattern does this fit? Is this the first time this has happened? Or is this the 15th time, dressed in a slightly different outfit? When you start asking that question, you will shock yourself with the answer, and the manipulator will sense the shift in you even if they cannot name it. Because for the first time, you are looking at them with clear eyes, and clear eyes are the most dangerous thing in the world to someone who has built their power on your blindness. Write this down if you need to. Say it to yourself before you walk into a difficult conversation. I see the pattern, not just this moment. The pattern. That single shift in awareness is the foundation of everything else we are about to cover. You are still here. Good. Because this is where most people stop watching, and this is exactly where the most important information begins. In the next segment, we go deeper. We talk about the silence that scares manipulators more than any argument ever could. We talk about how a Stoic emperor handled betrayal without losing his mind. And we revealed the one thing manipulators can never handle, the one thing that makes their entire game collapse. Stay with me. Well, no. The Aware Mind continues right after this. Welcome back. Before we move forward, I want you to do something. Think of one person in your life who leaves you feeling drained after every conversation. Not tired in the normal way. Drained. Like something was taken from you, but you cannot name what it was. Hold that person in your mind, because everything in this segment, every single word was written for you in that relationship. Tactic 2. The Stoic Freeze, the silence that breaks them. There is a moment in every manipulation attempt, a split second, where the manipulator waits for your reaction. That moment is everything. That moment is the entire game. They say something that stings, or they give you a look, or they sigh loudly and wait for you to ask what is wrong, or they accuse you of something calmly, in that quiet voice that somehow feels louder than a scream. And every cell in your body wants to react. You want to defend yourself. You want to explain. You want to prove them wrong. You want to make them understand. You want the discomfort to stop. And so you talk. You rush. You fill the silence with words and feelings and justifications. And the moment you do, they win. Not because they were right, but because your reaction gave them exactly what they needed. Data. Emotional data. They now know what hurts you, what scares you, what you feel guilty about, what you will do to make the tension go away, and they will file that information away, and they will use it again, and again, and again. Epictetus, a man who was born a slave, who had every reason to be broken by the world, who had nothing and no one to protect him, wrote something that has outlasted empires. He wrote, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Epictetus did not say that from a place of comfort. He said it from chains. He said it from a life where he had no control over anything except one thing, his own response. And that is exactly what the Stoic Freeze gives you. Control over your response. Here is how it works. When someone tries to provoke you, when they say the thing that is designed to make you react, you do not react. You do not respond immediately. You do not fill the silence. You simply look at them, calmly, steadily, and you let the silence sit there like a stone. Not an angry silence, not a cold silence, just stillness. Inside, you may be furious. Inside, you may be hurt. That is fine. You are human. But your face gives nothing. Your voice, when it finally comes, is low and unhurried. You choose your words like you are choosing them from a shelf, carefully, deliberately, without urgency. This is not about being a robot. This is about being the most powerful person in the room. Because here is what happens on the other side of your silence. The manipulator starts to panic. Quietly, invisibly, but they panic. Because they were expecting a reaction. They planned for a reaction. Their entire next move depended on your reaction. And when it does not come, they are standing in the middle of a stage with no script. They will try to fill the silence themselves. They will repeat themselves. They will escalate. They will soften. They will shift. They will expose themselves, because people who manipulate cannot stand psychological silence. It terrifies them, and all you did was breathe. Marcus Aurelius faced senators who hated him, generals who plotted against him, family members who betrayed him, and he wrote, not for the public, not for history, just for himself. In his private journal, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The silence that feels like an obstacle is actually your weapon. The discomfort you feel when you do not react, that discomfort is the feeling of your power growing. Practicities, not in big confrontations. Start small. The next time someone makes a passive remark designed to make you squirm, pause. Count 3 full seconds before you say anything. 3 seconds feels like a lifetime when the air is charged. But in those 3 seconds, something shifts. You shift, and they feel it. That decision made consistently will change the entire structure of every difficult relationship in your life. Not the polite, comfortable idea of power, but real power. How it is gained, how it is lost, how it moves between people like water finding the lowest ground. And one of his most striking observations was this. He wrote that the wise ruler does not reveal his true intentions. He does not show his full hand. He does not explain himself more than necessary. Because the moment your enemy or your manipulator understands exactly where you stand, exactly what you want, exactly what you fear, exactly what you will do, they have a map of you, and a map can be used to trap you. This tactic is what I call the fog of self. And it is not about lying. It is not about being fake or cold or impossible to connect with. It is about something far more elegant: chosen privacy. Here is the difference. Most people When they are around someone they want to impress or please, open up completely. They share their worries. They share their plans. They share their insecurities dressed up as jokes. They share too much, too fast, not because they are weak, but because they are human and connection feels good. But manipulators are listening to every word, and they are not filing it under things I love about you. They are filing it under things I can use Artush. The German philosopher who spent decades studying human nature, particularly its darker corners, wrote that most people reveal their character through what they complain about. Their complaints show what they lack. Their bragging shows what they are insecure about. Their questions show what they fear. Every word you speak in an unguarded moment is a window into your inner world. The fog of self means you learn to close some of those windows. Not all of them. Not forever. But strategically. Selectively. Especially around people who have not yet earned the right to see inside. How do you do this in practice? First, you stop over-explaining. When you make a decision, you do not owe anyone a detailed account of your reasoning. I've decided not to as a complete sentence. You do not need to add, because I was thinking that maybe it might not be a good idea, and I hope that's okay. That tail end, that anxious justification, is where manipulators find their entry point. Second, you become comfortable with vague answers, not dishonest answers. Vague ones. I'm still thinking it through. It depends. I haven't decided yet. These are not weaknesses. They are shields. Third, you stop sharing your next move before you make it. This is hard. Because we are wired for connection. We want to share our excitement, our plans, our hopes. But with certain people, sharing a plan is an invitation for them to undermine it. To poke holes in it. To make you doubt yourself before you even begin. Machiavelli put it coldly, but clearly. He wrote that men are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that one who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. His point was not that you should become a deceiver. His point was that the world is full of people ready to exploit openness, and wisdom means knowing when openness is safe and when it is not. Jung would frame it differently. He would say that individuation, the process of becoming a fully realized, self-aware human being, requires learning to distinguish between people who are genuinely safe to be vulnerable with and people who are not. That discernment, Jung said, is not coldness. It is wisdom. You are not closing yourself off from the world. You are becoming selective, and selective people are never easy targets. There is a beautiful, quiet power in being the person no one can fully read. Not because you are hiding something shameful, but because you have learned that mystery creates respect. When people cannot predict you, they cannot control you. When they cannot control you, they cannot manipulate you. You become, in the language of strategy, unpredictable terrain. And nobody builds a trap on terrain they cannot map. Now I want to stay on this idea for just a moment longer, because there's a piece of this that most people miss. The fog of self is not just about what you say, it is about what your body says. Nietzsche wrote that the higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly. And while he meant this in a spiritual sense about people who are ahead of their time, it applies here too. The person who carries themselves with quiet self-containment appears larger, not smaller. They do not shrink to be understood. They do not over-gesture, over-explain, over-smile to fill the discomfort of being seen. Watch your body the next time you are in a tense conversation. Do you lean in too quickly? Do you nod too much? Do you laugh at things that are not funny because you want to ease the tension? Do you look away when someone stares at you a moment too long? These are all signals. And manipulators read signals the way musicians read sheet music fluently, automatically, without even thinking about it. The fog of self means your body learns to say less too. Stillness over nervous energy. Steady eye contact over avoidance. A slow, measured pace over rushed defensiveness. Not because you are performing calm, but because you are practicing it until it becomes real. And here's the gift that nobody talks about. When you stop giving so much away to everyone, all the time, the things you do share become precious. The people who truly know you, the ones you choose to let in, feel the weight and the honor of that. Real intimacy is not built on sharing everything. It is built on choosing carefully who gets to see you. The fog of self protects you from predators, but it also, quietly and beautifully, deepens every relationship worth keeping. We are at the halfway point now. And if you have been listening carefully, you may have noticed something. These tactics are not about becoming hard. They are not about becoming unfeeling or suspicious of everyone around you. They are about becoming whole, becoming someone so grounded in their own awareness that manipulation simply has nowhere to land. Jung called this becoming conscious. Marcus Aurelius called it ruling yourself before you rule anything else. Machiavelli called it knowing the game. I call it waking up, and you are halfway there. In the next segment, we go into the deep end. We talk about guilt, the most powerful weapon a manipulator has, and the one countermove they never see coming. We talk about what happens when you stop apologizing for existing. And we reveal a tactic so psychologically precise that it does not just stop manipulation, it reverses it entirely. Do not go anywhere. The aware mind continues right now. Let me ask you something personal. How many times have you said sorry this week? Not for something you genuinely did wrong. Not for an honest mistake, but sorry for taking up space. Sorry for having a need. Sorry for saying no. Sorry for existing in a way that inconvenienced someone else. If you are being honest with yourself, the number is probably higher than it should be. And that number, that quiet, constant stream of apologies is not a sign of your kindness. It is a sign that someone, somewhere, taught you that your comfort matters less than theirs, that your boundaries are negotiable, that your feelings are a burden that needs to be managed and minimized and apologized for. That was not an accident. That was a design. And today, we are going to dismantle it. Tactic 4. The guilt inversion. Stop carrying what was never yours. Guilt is the master weapon of the manipulator. Not anger. Not threats, not cruelty. Guilt. Because guilt does something no other emotion does. It turns you against yourself. It makes you the prosecutor, the jury, and the prisoner all at once. It makes you work against your own interests in order to feel like a good person, and the manipulator does not have to lift a finger because you do all the work for them. Sigmund Freud identified what he called the superego, the part of the mind that internalizes rules, judgments, and the voice of authority figures from your past, your parents, your teachers, the people who shaped your earliest understanding of what it means to be good, acceptable, and loved. Manipulators hack this system. They do not create the guilt from nothing. They find the guilt that is already inside you, the old, inherited fear of being bad, being selfish, being a disappointment. And they aim it at themselves like a weapon. They position themselves as the person your goodness must serve, and because you already carry this deep need to be seen as a good person, you comply, you shrink, you give, you apologize, even when you have done absolutely nothing wrong. Here is a real example. You tell someone you cannot meet this weekend. You have been exhausted. You need rest. You have given every spare hour of the last month to other people, and you finally carve out time for yourself. And they say, no, it's fine. I just thought after everything I've been going through, you'd want to be there for me. But it's fine. Take care of yourself. And just like that, your weekend of rest becomes a weekend of guilt. You spend the hours you were supposed to recover, instead replaying the conversation in your head, wondering if you are selfish, wondering if you should call, wondering if you are a bad friend. Meanwhile, they are fine. They always were. The suffering was performed. The guilt was engineered, and you paid the price with your peace. Robert Greene wrote about what he described as the use of selective suffering, the way certain people deploy their pain, not as a genuine cry for help, but as a way to make you feel responsible for emotions that were never yours to carry. The guilt inversion tactic works like this. The next time someone tries to make you feel guilty for a boundary, for a need, for a no, you do not defend yourself. You do not explain. You do not apologize. Instead, you do something quietly radical. You name what is happening internally to yourself. In that moment, you say, this is a guilt play. This is not my guilt. This belongs to them. You do not say it out loud. You do not accuse them. You simply refuse to pick it up, like a bag left on your doorstep that was never addressed to you. You look at it. You see it, and you leave it where it is. Epictetus said it plainly. Seek not that the things which happen should happen as you wish, but wish the things which happen to be as they are, and you will have a tranquil flow of life. In modern terms, stop trying to fix feelings that were manufactured to trap you. The guilt inversion also works outwardly, in the moment when someone escalates. When they sigh, so you just don't care about me, you respond, quietly, without heat. I care about you. I also care about myself. Both things are true. No apology, no retraction, no rush to smooth it over. Just a steady calm, immovable statement of dual truth. You care for them and you care for yourself, and neither one cancels the other out. This simple reframe dismantles the guilt mechanism entirely. Because the guilt play only works when you accept the premise that your needs and their needs are in competition. The moment you refuse that premise, the moment you hold both truths at once, the lever has nothing to push against. And watch what happens next. Often, they will escalate. They will push harder. They will become more dramatic. And this escalation is actually the most important moment of all, because it reveals the truth beneath the performance. A person in genuine pain does not escalate when you show them compassion. A manipulator does, because they were not looking for compassion. They were looking for surrender, and you just stopped surrendering. Tactic 5. The value withdrawal make them chase what they took for granted. Here's something nobody tells you about manipulation. It is almost always built on an addiction, not a chemical addiction. A psychological one. The manipulator becomes addicted to your reactions, your attention, your care, your presence. They do not love you the way a healthy person loves. They consume me, like a habit they cannot break. And like every addiction, the moment the supply is cut off, they become desperate. This is the foundation of Tactic 5. The value withdrawal. Jordan Peterson, the psychologist and philosopher who has spent decades studying dominance and the psychology of human behavior, has written extensively about what happens when someone consistently undervalues themselves. In a relationship, he argues that self-betrayal, the act of repeatedly abandoning your own standards to keep someone else comfortable, does not create love. It creates contempt. The other person, consciously or not, begins to see you as someone without standards, without backbone, and people without backbone are not respected. They are used. Peterson writes, you should take care of, help and be good to yourself the same way you would take care of, help and be good to someone you loved and valued. That line sounds simple, but for people who have been conditioned by manipulation, people who have been trained to put everyone else first, to make themselves small, to be endlessly available, that line is revolutionary. The value withdrawal is not about punishment. It is not about playing games. It is about something far more honest, accurately representing your own worth. Here is how it looks in practice. You stop being available all the time, not as a strategy, but as a truth. You have a life. You have needs. You have a limited amount of time and energy and emotional capacity, and you begin to distribute those things based on who has earned them, rather than who demands them most loudly. You stop rushing to respond. You stop rearranging your plans. You stop showing up for people who have never once shown up for you. And here's what happens. The manipulator, who was used to having unlimited access to your attention, suddenly notices the supply has changed. At first, they may not react at all because they are so accustomed to your compliance that they assume it will return. But when it does not, when they reach for you and find stillness instead of eagerness, something shifts. Some will soften. Some will suddenly become genuinely curious about your well-being in a way they never were before. Some will show you, for the first time, what real effort looks like. And some will reveal themselves entirely. They will become angry, dismissive, showing you clearly that what they valued was not you, but your submission. Either outcome is information, and information is power. Machiavelli wrote, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him." Apply this to yourself. The first method for understanding the nature of your relationships is to watch what people do when you stop making it easy. Schopenhauer observed that human beings, by nature, tend to desire most what they fear losing. He wrote that the will is term for the deep, primal driving force of human psychology is always oriented toward what it cannot have, what it might lose, what remains just out of reach. When you become fully available, fully predictable, fully surrendered, you remove yourself from that category entirely. You become something they have already won, and people do not fight for what they have already won. When you practice the value withdrawal, when you reclaim your time, your energy, your emotional presence, and begin giving it selectively, you re-enter that category. Not through manipulation, but through the simple, quiet act of valuing yourself. And the people who are capable of real connection, they will rise to meet you. They will appreciate the realness of it. They will feel the weight and the gift of your presence, precisely because they know it is not guaranteed. The ones who cannot meet you, who escalate, disappear, or punish you for having a self. They are telling you everything you need to know. Let them. Tactic 6. The reverse confession. Turn their weapon into your mirror. This one is subtle. This one requires practice. But when you master it, it is perhaps the most quietly devastating tactic in this entire video. Here is the setup. Manipulators often use a move called projection, which we touched on earlier with Freud, where they accuse you of the very thing they are doing. The person who is lying accuses you of being dishonest. The person who is using you accuses you of being selfish. The person who is emotionally absent accuses you of not caring enough. This is not a coincidence. This is a pattern, and it is so consistent that psychologists have identified it as one of the most reliable signs of a manipulative personality. Why do they do it? Because accusation is a distraction. If they can get you focused on defending yourself against a charge, even a false one, you stop looking at them. You stop seeing their behavior. You get sucked into the courtroom of their making, defending a case you never should have been charged with. Carl Jung called this the return of the shadow. He wrote that what we cannot face in ourselves, we see in others. The manipulator, unable to face their own dishonesty, their own selfishness, their own emotional vacancy, projects it onto you, makes it yours, and watches you carry it. The reverse confession works like this. When someone accuses you of something you know is a projection, when you feel that particular sting of being charged with their crime, you do not defend. You do not explain. You do not counter-accuse. Instead, you get curious. You say, calmly, and without sarcasm, "That's interesting. What makes you feel that way?" Or, "Tell me more about that." Or simply, and then you wait. Meanwhile, you are watching. You are learning. Every word they say about what they accuse you of is a window directly into what they are doing, what they fear being caught doing, and how their inner world actually works. You are no longer on trial. You are the observer. Plato, in his dialogues, wrote about the power of the question. His mentor Socrates built an entire philosophy around it, the idea that the most powerful and intellectual move available to a human being is not to assert, but to ask tokipaski, to draw out what is already there and let it reveal itself in the light. The reverse confession is Socratic in nature. You are not attacking. You are not defending. You're simply opening a door and letting them walk through it into the exposure of their own design. It takes nerve. It takes the discipline to suppress the urge to defend yourself. When you know you are being falsely accused, that's suppression. It's not easy. Every instinct you have will scream at you to correct the record, to set the story straight. But here is what happens if you do. The moment you defend yourself against a false accusation, you give it life. You give it oxygen. You enter into a debate about a reality that was invented to trap you. And that debate, no matter how brilliantly you argue, is one you cannot fully win. Because the manipulator is not interested in truth. They are interested in your energy, and defense gives them your energy in abundance. The reverse confession starves them instead. Your calm curiosity, your unhurried questions, your willingness to let them keep talking, it starves the projection of the reaction it needs to survive. And eventually, in the silence of your patience, the truth surfaces. Not because you forced it, but because you created the conditions in which it could not stay hidden. Take a breath. We have covered 6 tactics. And I want to pause here, not because we are done, but because I want to acknowledge something. This is not easy work. Learning to see manipulation clearly in people you may love, in people you trusted, in people who shaped who you are is one of the most painful forms of growing up. It requires you to grieve certain versions of relationships that you believed in. It requires you to accept that kindness was sometimes performance, and care was sometimes calculation. That grief is real. And it is valid, and it deserves to be felt. But on the other side of that grief, and I say this not as a motivational line, but as a clinical, psychological, observable truth, on the other side of that grief is a version of you that no one can touch. A version of you that moves through the world with open eyes and a steady heart and the quiet, unshakable confidence of someone who knows exactly what they are worth. We have one tactic left, and it is the most powerful of all. Not because it is the most complex, but because it is the most final, the most complete, the one that closes the door on manipulation, not just for today, but permanently. Stay with me. One more segment. The aware mind finishes strong right now. We have arrived. 6 tactics in, and if you have made it this far, if you have sat with every uncomfortable truth, every mirror held up, every moment of recognition, then I want you to know something. Most people click away. Most people feel the discomfort of seeing their own life clearly, and they choose the easier path. They close the tab. They scroll to something lighter. They go back to not knowing. You did not do that, and that alone tells me something important about you. It tells me you are ready for the final tactic, the one that is not really a tactic at all, but a transformation. Because the first 6 tactics give you tools. This one gives you something deeper. It gives you the foundation that makes all the other tools work. Without this one, the rest are just tricks. With it, they become a way of life. Tactic 7. The integrated self becomes someone manipulation cannot find a foothold in. Let's go back to Carl Jung one final time. Jung spent his entire life working toward one central idea. He called it individuation, the process of becoming fully and completely yourself. Not the self your parents wanted. Not the self your culture approved of. Not the self you performed for other people's comfort. But your actual, whole, integrated self, including the parts that are complicated, contradictory, messy, and difficult. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." That line sounds beautiful, but what it actually means psychologically, practically, and the real texture of daily life is this. When you are fully integrated, when you have done the work of knowing yourself, your real values, your real limits, your real needs, your real strengths, there's almost nothing a manipulator can use against you. Think about it. Every manipulation tactic we covered in this video works by exploiting a gap between who you think you are and who you are afraid you might be. The guilt play works because you are not certain of your own goodness. The projection works because part of you fears the accusation might be true. The praise manipulation works because you are still hungry for validation from outside yourself. But when you have done the inner work, when you have sat with your own shadow, as Jung instructed, and looked at it honestly, and integrated it, those gaps close. And a closed gap cannot be exploited. This is the deepest truth in all of psychology, and it is the truth that manipulators consciously or not are most afraid of. A person who truly knows themselves is the hardest person in the world to manipulate. So how do you build the integrated self? Not as an abstract philosophy, but as a real, daily, lived practice. It begins with what Jung called shadow work, the practice of getting honest about the parts of yourself you have been hiding, even from yourself. Ask yourself these questions and answer them honestly. When do you feel the most defensive? What accusation, ebony fouls, makes your heart race? What quality in other people irritates you most deeply? What do you most fear other people discovering about you? These reactions are not random. They are signals. They point directly to the parts of your inner world that are unresolved, unintegrated, and therefore vulnerable, because we are most easily manipulated precisely in the areas where we are least honest with ourselves. Nietzsche wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." The person who knows their values, who knows clearly what they stand for, what they will not compromise on, what they are building their life toward, extraordinarily hard to derail. Because manipulation, at its core, is an attempt to replace your why with someone else's. to make you serve their agenda instead of your own. And when your why is unclear, that substitution is easy. But when your why is iron, when you wake up every morning anchored to a clear sense of purpose, identity, and direction, the manipulator's agenda has nowhere to attach. Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, best known for his theories on adaptation and evolution, proposed something that applies here in a profound way. He argued that organisms adapt not just to survive, but that each adaptation, over time, becomes inherited, becomes part of who they are, becomes structural. The same is true of the psychological adaptations we are talking about today. The first time you hold your silence instead of reacting, it is hard. It feels unnatural. Your hands might shake. Your heart might race. You might cave at the last second. The second time, slightly easier. The 10th time, it begins to feel like you. The 50th time, it is you. This is the integrated self in action. You are not performing strength. You are not pretending to be. You are becoming, through repeated practice and honest self-examination, someone for whom these responses are natural, automatic, real, and that person, that grounded, self-aware, integrated person walks through the world differently. They do not announce their power. They do not need to. It is simply visible in the way they carry themselves, in the way they pause before they speak, in the way they hold eye contact without aggression, in the way they say no without explanation and yes without resentment. People feel Italiano, and manipulators feel it. Most of all, Albert Ellis, the psychologist who founded rational emotive behavior therapy and spent decades helping people dismantle the irrational beliefs that kept them trapped, argued that most human suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from the beliefs we hold about what happens to us. Specifically, the belief that we must have other people's approval to be okay. The belief that we must be seen as good, capable, lovable, or we are in danger. These beliefs are the soil in which manipulation grows. Ellis called them masturbatory beliefs, the tyranny of the must. I must be liked. I must not disappoint. I must keep the peace. I must be needed. The integrated self replaces must with choose. I choose to help when I genuinely want to. I choose to engage when it serves my values. I choose to stay in this relationship because it enriches my life, not because I am afraid of what leaving would mean. That shift from must to choose is one of the most liberating psychological transformations a human being can make, and it does not require years of therapy, though therapy can help. It begins with a simple, daily, courageous act of noticing when you are operating from fear instead of freedom, and gently, persistently, choosing differently. I want to end with something that Machiavelli said that most people misunderstand. People read Machiavelli and think he was teaching cruelty. They think he was building a manual for tyrants. But what Machiavelli was actually doing at his deepest level was describing the world as it is, not as we wish it were. He was saying, here is how power actually moves. Here is what people actually do when they want something. Here is the reality beneath the performance. And his final point, the one that gets lost in all the talk of lions and foxes and princes, was this: the ruler who lasts, the person who holds genuine power over the long arc of their life, is not the one who is most cunning or most ruthless or most calculating. It is the one who knows themselves completely. Because a person who knows themselves cannot be told who they are by someone else, cannot be rewritten by someone else's narrative, cannot be made to doubt what they know to be true about themselves. That is the final armor, the one manipulation cannot pierce. And so here is where we arrive. Together, you came into this video as someone who felt something was wrong but could not name it, someone who had been drained and confused and made to feel guilty for simply having needs. You leave it differently. You leave with the shadow mirror, the ability to see patterns beneath performances. You leave with the Stoic Freeze, the silence that breaks every urgency trap. You leave with the fog of self, the chosen privacy that makes you unreadable. You leave with the guilt inversion, the refusal to carry what was never yours. You leave with the value withdrawal, the reclaiming of your own worth. You leave with a reverse confession, the patient curiosity that turns projection into exposure. And you leave with the integrated self, the deepest, most unshakable foundation of all. These are not tricks. They are not games. They are not ways to become cold or hard or close to the world. They are the architecture of a life that manipulation simply cannot enter. Jung said it. Machiavelli said it. Epictetus said it from chains. Marcus Aurelius said it from a throne. Peterson says it from a lecture hall. Ellis said it from a therapy couch. And all of them across centuries, across cultures, across radically different lives, arrived at the same truth. The most powerful thing you can ever become is yourself. Fully. Honestly. Without apology. Not the version of you that people manipulated into existence. The version that was there before they started. The version that is still there underneath everything they tried to bury it with. Go find that version. Protect it, and never apologize for it again. If this video opened something in you today, if something shifted, even slightly, drop a comment below. Tell me which tactic hits you hardest. Tell me the moment you recognized yourself in something I said. Because you watching, you staying, you being here, that is not small. That is the beginning. This is the aware mind. If this reached you, share it with one person who needs it. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because what we do here is not entertainment. It is excavation, and we are just getting started. I will see you in the next one.